When you think about the 2002 film John Q, what probably comes to mind is a high-stakes hostage thriller, right? But if you look just a little bit closer, it's so much more than that. It's this incredible social drama that takes a really extreme situation and uses it to ask some pretty tough questions. Questions about justice, about the system we live in, and maybe the biggest one of all, what's a human life really worth? And that's really the question the whole movie hangs on, isn't it? How much is a human life worth? I mean, it sounds like something you'd debate in a philosophy class, but what John Q does is yank that question out of the abstract and make it brutally, heartbreakingly real. See, for our main guy, John Q. Archibald, the answer to that huge question wasn't about morality or ethics. Nope, it was a number on an invoice from a hospital. His son's life had a price tag, and it was one he just couldn't pay. And that, right there, is the engine that drives this entire gut-wrenching story. All right, so let's get into it. An ordinary man, an impossible choice. To really get why this story hits so hard, we first have to understand the man at the center of it all. Just who is this Sean Q guy? Well, the thing about John is that he's designed to be, well, us. He's a total everyman. Just a regular working-class dude. He works hard, he's honest, and he's completely devoted to his family. But here's the key thing you gotta know about him. He believes in the system. He's one of those guys who plays by all the rules, puts in the overtime, and just trusts that if he does his part, the world will take care of him. He's basically a walking symbol of that little voice in our heads that says, hey, as long as you're a good person and work hard, everything's gonna be all right. And then, boom, that whole illusion just shatters. Everything changes in an instant when his young son collapses during a baseball game. It's a serious heart condition. And in that one moment, you can feel the movie just shift gears completely. It goes from being this personal family drama to a nail-biting social thriller. It's just one desperate dad against a force that seems absolutely immovable. So what is this immovable force? Well, that brings us to our next section, a system without a heart. Because you see, the real villain in this story, the true antagonist, it isn't a person. No, it's something way more terrifying than that. It's a cold, impersonal, bureaucratic healthcare system. And the film lays out this conflict so clearly. It really boils down to two things pushing against each other. On one hand, you've got the medical side of it, right? The doctors know exactly what to do. There's a solution. A heart transplant is possible. But then, on the other hand, you have the administration, the paperwork, and that's just a giant financial barrier. John's insurance plan changed, it won't cover the operation, so his son can't even get his name on the transplant list. It's just this brutal look at a world where your right to live literally depends on your ability to pay up. And you know what's so clever about how the movie handles this is that the system isn't portrayed as some mustache-twirling villain. The hospital administrator, the nurses, they aren't evil people. They're just doing their jobs, following the rules, they're cold, they're formal, and they're running a system that is governed by policies, not by compassion. It's a structure that's totally legal, but as John finds out, it's also deeply, deeply unjust. And that's what makes it so scary, right? It's neutrality. You can't punch a policy. There's no single person to fight, just this massive, unfeeling wall of procedure. So you've got this unbreakable wall. And what happens when a man is pushed against it? He breaks. Which brings us to our next big idea, when law isn't justice. This is where the movie really puts its moral core on the line and asks that huge, difficult question. What do you do when following the law and doing the right thing are two totally different paths? So what does he do? He does something desperate. He takes the entire emergency room hostage. Now let's be clear, this is a major crime. But the movie is so careful, so deliberate in how it frames this. It's not shown as an act of terrorism or malice. It's framed as the last, primal scream of a father who has been backed into a corner with absolutely no other options left. He's not there to hurt anyone. He just wants his son to live. And this is where the movie turns the camera around and points it right at us, the audience. It shoves this really uncomfortable question right in our faces. If you were in his shoes, in that exact same impossible spot, would you really have done anything different? The film just completely blurs that line between right and wrong, and it forces you to think, okay, where is my breaking point? What would I do if I was pushed that far? All right, next up, echoes of desperation, media, and hostages. Because of course, a crisis like this doesn't just happen in a little bubble. No, it explodes onto the public stage. And the way the other people, the hostages inside and the media outside, react tells us a whole lot about the kind of society John is fighting against.
So inside the ER, you've got this group of hostages who are basically a mini version of society itself. You've got sick people, healthy people, rich, poor, the whole shebang. And at first, they're exactly what you'd expect. They're victims. They're terrified of this guy with a gun. But then, something amazing happens. They start to listen to his story. They see the injustice with their own eyes, and that fear starts to melt away. It turns into understanding, and eventually, they start rooting for him. It's such a powerful message, right? That real empathy doesn't come from rules on a page, it comes from experiencing someone else's pain.
Okay, so while that's happening inside, outside you've got the media swarming in. And they do what the media does. They turn this family's private agony into a public spectacle, into primetime TV. But here's the crazy twist. This whole media circus, as ugly as it is, ends up being John's only real weapon. Because it turns out that public pressure is the only thing that can make a system this cold and rigid actually bend. The system doesn't care about one man's son, but it does care when the whole world is watching.
All right, let's bring it all home. Let's talk about John Q's lasting message. After all the dust settles, after all the chaos and desperation, what are we supposed to take away from all this? What's the final point of John's fight?
Now, the ending of the movie, it gives us that emotional release we're craving, right? John's son gets the heart he needs, we can all breathe a sigh of relief. But, and this is so important, the movie deliberately leaves the actual problem completely unsolved. The system that created this nightmare in the first place, it doesn't change one bit. John's win is just for him. It's temporary. It's not a change to the structure. And that's the film's really sobering final punch. One person winning their battle doesn't fix the whole broken system.
So when you boil it all down, John Q really leaves us with a few big ideas to chew on. First, that a human life should never, ever have a price tag on it. Second, that if you create a system that has no empathy, you're going to create desperate people. It's inevitable. Third, that having laws on the books is meaningless if those laws don't have some kind of moral compass. And maybe the biggest lesson of all, that the real enemy usually isn't another person. It's the cold, unfeeling structures that we build for ourselves.
And really, all of that leads us to this final lingering thought. Because John Q is more than just a movie, isn't it? It's a warning shot. It's a suggestion that maybe the best way to measure a society's worth isn't by its power or its wealth, but by how it treats its most vulnerable members. It's a question that hit hard back in 2002. And you know what? It feels every bit as urgent today.